Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to officially welcome each and every one of you to our higher education series. My name is Ricardo Jefferson. I'm the loan ombudsman. I work in the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking here, and I'm here to kick off our very first higher education series. Just so you know, this series is just one of three programs on higher education. The first one today is called What Will Fall Term Look Like? Next week, we will have a separate presentation on financial aid and your student account. The third in the series is called Being a Successful Virtual Student, and that will be on August the 11th, also at 5 p.m. Just a few basic housekeeping issues. We'd like to ask all participants to stay on the listen mode only. Please use the chat function to ask any questions or communicate with any other participants or panelists, and please hold all questions and answers to the end. So once we finish, after all the panelists have spoken, we'll go through any questions that are there in the chat box. Once again, my name is Ricardo Jefferson. I'm the Student Loan Ombudsman. I'd like to welcome you officially to our very first higher education series. Having said that, I would like to introduce our commissioner, Karima Woods, who was just confirmed today by council to be commissioner over the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking. So I'm very delighted to introduce her for the very first time as Commissioner Woods. Commissioner Woods.
Great, thank you, Ricardo. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes? Okay, excellent. Well, I wish I could see all of you, but I just want to welcome you and thank you for being with us this afternoon. As Ricardo has mentioned, I am Karima Woods, newly appointed and confirmed Commissioner of the District's Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking, and I'm so pleased to be here with you all today. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to our very first higher education series, and I'm looking forward to hearing feedback about today's series. And I know that Ricardo has been hard at work with planning this series, and so we have 2 additional sessions in the month of August, and I'm hoping you'll be joining us for as well. It is a treat for us to have this event. We're well represented by our local and regional colleges and universities. We have the University of the District of Columbia, in addition to Howard University, and 2 universities from Maryland, the University of Maryland, and also Morgan State University. So you all are in for a real treat for a very important and timely conversation today. First, I just want to briefly thank and recognize our partners for their participation and support, the district's Office of the State Superintendent of Education, specifically the DC Tuition Assistance Grant Program and the Educational Opportunity Center, which is a federal TRIO program of the College Board. So thank you all for your support for today's event. As I mentioned, today's topic is quite timely and relevant for many of our families and students and schools as they are weighing their options for the upcoming fall semester. Many of you know the impact that COVID-19 has had throughout the world, but particularly as it relates to our young people as they're gearing up to start their very first semester in college, or for those college seniors that were looking forward to their graduating year. The reality is that this fall semester is going to look different across the board. And so we're here today to talk about what that's going to look like, to weigh the pros and cons and discuss what's happening here locally with our colleges and universities as they are gearing up for the fall semester. A few weeks ago, Harvard University announced that it would only invite 40% of its undergraduates to live on campus this fall. But students will not attend live classes. Instead, they will be isolating in their single dormitory rooms and taking all their classes online. So today, we want to hear about what our regional universities are planning and how they're preparing for the upcoming fall semester. The Bowser administration understands and recognizes the importance of higher education and what it offers to many of our families and universities. We know that this can have a dramatic impact on our communities. It can transform families. And so we want to be supportive of that. We want to provide all of the relevant information to ensure that our young people and their families are prepared for the upcoming fall semester. The Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking is fully committed to supporting you in your pursuit of higher education, and we're excited to be able to offer this summer 2020 higher education series. We want you to stay on track regardless of whether or not you plan to be at home, attending classes virtually, or whether you're going to be on campus. If you have any concerns regarding funding for higher education and student loan debt management, please contact our student loan ombudsman, Ricardo Jefferson, for direct assistance. Ricardo has been hard at work on putting this series together and has made himself available as it relates to all things related to student loans and student debt management. I also want to thank and recognize Brian Williams, who is the Associate Commissioner for the Banking Bureau, who's on the call as well, and works directly with Ricardo also. Please visit our website at disb.dc.gov to learn more about the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking and the work that we do overall. Follow us on Twitter at DCDisby, and please follow us on Facebook as well. Again, I want to thank you all for being here this afternoon. Thank you, Ricardo, for your work. As I mentioned, Ricardo's been doing some great work, and we want to make sure the community knows about it. These sessions are really for the community. It's in place to ensure that our students and families are well informed. So please spread the word and please participate. Again, I want to thank you for your time, and it's my pleasure to kick it back over to you, Ricardo, so that you can start with our very esteemed panel today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your kind and wonderful words, Commissioner Woods. And having said that, I want to jump right into our introductions. Our very first speaker is Mr. Benjamin Beltran. He's a coordinator of Common Ground Multicultural Dialogue Program for the University of Maryland. He will be followed by Chevaun Whitman, who is director of the One-Stop Service Center, Berry Centers at the Morgan State University, who will then be followed by Mr. Omar Harrod, who is the lead recruitment specialist at the University of District of Columbia. And last but certainly not least, we will have Tammy McCants, who is the director of admission the associate director of admission for Howard University. So having said that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Beltran. Go ahead, Ben.
Great, thank you. Can everyone hear me? Cool.
Yes.
If at any point my audio gives out, feel free to say something or, just put a note in the chat. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here this afternoon. For all of you that are attending this virtually, it's so interesting. So much of our lives have now shifted to this format now. So this feels sort of familiar now, but still strange. But this is kind of the new normal. So as Ricardo said, my name is Ben. I work at the University of Maryland, College Park. Really briefly about my role, just so you can understand a little bit about the work I do and sort of what I can kind of speak to. I work in student affairs, student life, so I do a lot of co-curricular programming on campus, primarily around diversity and inclusion education. That's sort of my focus, so I help to put on sort of various events on campus. I advise our student leaders, like our resident assistants, to help them sort of be more inclusive student leaders and work in our diverse campus environment. And I also do teach one class in the fall, which is a sort of general education course on cultural competency. So my lens is primarily student life and a little bit of teaching, and so that's kind of what I can speak to today. So the bullet points on the slide, it might be a little bit ambitious, what I've laid out here. What I'm going to try to do is talk just a little bit about specifically what we have planned at the University of Maryland and just highlight a couple things that I think I've heard from students and witnessed as far as some of the issues and dilemmas they've had as it relates to COVID-19. So just a little bit about University of Maryland, College Park. I mean, it's a large public institution. You're going to hear from other folks today on the panel who have sort of different institutional types. And so depending on the kind of university or college, that will inform a lot of what's going to happen this fall. Because we are a large institution and we have a large population of students who live on campus, a lot of our focus has been on sort of what do we do to de-densify our campus, because typically we have, with undergraduates and graduate students, around 40,000 people on campus, and that's not even considering the faculty and the staff. And so what we know about COVID-19 is that's too many people to have in one place, right? And so the first thing that I'll talk about a little bit is the issue of living on campus. So as far as institutions go, we do have a really large population of students who choose to live in our residence halls, live on campus. And so I think a common refrain throughout all of this has been that, you know, the situation is evolving and changing. Decisions we make today are different than the decisions we made 2 weeks ago, and maybe different from the decisions we make 2 weeks from now, right? And so I think a really interesting illustration of that, even as I was putting together the bullets for this slide, like the information was changing, right? So initially for the residence halls, we were going to bring back close to, or we were going to offer close to 90% of the beds that we would have in our residence halls. And essentially we were just going to eliminate triples and quads, right? Like residence hall rooms that have 3 or 4 people or more. So that was the plan we outlined. We informed students of that, and a little while later, it became clear that a lot of students didn't want to do that, right? And so actually what we are now left with is a little bit under 50% occupancy, right? And I think there were a lot of reasons why students opted not to live on campus. A primary one is a couple bullet points down where you see that we're only going to have about 20% of our classes in person, right? So I think for a lot of students, they thought, well, you know, I can live on campus. I'm tired of being in my parents' house. I've been in quarantine for 3 months. Like, I'd like to live on campus, especially if I have some in-person classes. But what happened is a lot of students found out that all of their classes are going to be online, right? For many students, that's the case. And so I think with that, a lot of them decided that it wasn't worth the money for them to live in a residence hall on campus and take all online courses, right? So now, because we're at under 50% occupancy, all the students who have chosen to live on campus will be in single occupancy rooms. That wasn't the initial plan, but that's now the new plan. And we're in a world where new plans are popping up every day. So that's where we're at with the residence halls. I do work for Resident Life, so I lead with that. But that is a big part of the experience at Maryland because we have so many students who live on campus and so many students who are coming sort of for that holistic, traditional college experience, right? To have a roommate, to join student organizations, join a fraternity, a sorority, go to football games, all that kind of stuff. And we know that that experience is going to look drastically different in the fall. So, yeah, so as far as like some of those trademark experiences of like your first semester on campus as a new student, a lot of our programming is going to be in a virtual format, right? If you think about like many institutions have some sort of welcome week or like welcome programs where maybe the president will come and speak. I know at Maryland, we usually have an event in the football stadium where we sort of introduce students to our school pride and traditions. And, you know, we like show outdoor movies. We do all this fun stuff. All of these large scale programs, they're not going to happen this year, or they'll be adapted to a virtual format. So this year, our president, and we actually have a new university president who just started this summer, he'll actually be greeting the students virtually. So a lot of those in-person programs won't happen. So the student experience will be really different. But I think it's important to name that a lot of folks are working hard to figure out how can we still put on these programs, particularly the ones that are sort of educational in nature or help students to build connections with campus resources or other students. How can we still offer this in a virtual format? Because what we don't want is students to be sort of in the residence hall rooms, feeling isolated and feeling like they're not supported or feeling like they're not getting the experience that they wanted. So yeah, that's a little bit about what the fall will look like. As far as safety goes, it's all the things that you would hope for. I mean, we're going to ask students to wear masks, and it will be required throughout campus, particularly in our residence halls and classrooms. Every student's going to actually receive 2 face masks when they move in, when they come to campus, so that's good. Physical distancing will be set up. We'll have lots of signage. We'll have spots where people are supposed to stand in certain places. If you all have been to grocery stores and places like that, you've probably seen folks doing things like that, little arrows that tell you which door to walk in and which ones to walk out. So there will be a lot of that. So it'll be very different in that sense. So we'll have a lot of safety guidelines in place. It's going to really be, I think, we're going to have to work a lot with students to get the buy-in so that they are actually sort of following these guidelines, right? That's something that we're a little bit concerned about, but that's just something that we'll have to work with once the fall semester arrives. So I'll speak for a minute or two here. I don't want to take up too much time. I'll speak for a minute or two about, I think, some of the things that have come up for students that I've been talking with, from mid-March when the world turned upside down until now. So I think one issue that comes up for our students, and as we've made decisions about what we're going to do in the fall, we have so many different types of students at the University of Maryland because it is a large public institution. We have in-state students, we have out-of-state students, and so we recognize that for a lot of students, looking at what this fall Maryland experience will look like and understanding that all or most of their classes will be online, a lot of students have the ability to say, I'm just going to stay at home, take my online classes that way, and it will be fine. Or even if they have one class, maybe they live in PG County or Montgomery County and they can drive to that one class once a week, and that's no problem. But we have a lot of students, or we at least have some students who, maybe they don't have a home environment to go back to, right? So when we were sort of shutting down campus in the spring, an issue that we had was as we were sending students home, quote unquote, like for some people, the residence halls on campus are their home, and that's their most stable home environment. So housing insecurity is an issue for some of our students. Public transportation continues to be an issue. We do have some students who commute, although most of our students live on campus. For those that do commute, they rely on the metro, and that is not necessarily the most reliable form of transportation at this point in time. So that's something we're cognizant of. Obviously, there have been a ton of different financial concerns that students have had since March as the economy has taken the direction that it has. And so I think there's a lot of tough questions that students are asking and that you all will probably want to consider related to sort of what is worth it as far as the money that you're going to pay toward your college experience this fall, right? Knowing that it will look different. Some students are wondering, should I still pay University of Maryland tuition for all online courses, for example? And I think that's a great question. I think everyone could have a different answer to that question. I'll say as someone who does teach some classes that I think a lot of courses can be just as meaningful and rigorous in an online format, but some can't, right? And so that's something to consider. And the last thing I'll say is, I think for me, something that I'm mindful of going into this semester, if we envision a residence hall, and we envision all these people that have, many of them have moved out of their family's home for the first time, and they're new to this campus community. I think there's going to be a lot of challenges with students who are in their own dorm room, right? They're no longer going to have a roommate. There's not going to be in-person programs where they would normally meet other students. They're not going to be able to necessarily gather in the dining halls. All these opportunities where students would make connections, build friendships, build relationships, become sort of immersed in the campus community, there will be fewer opportunities for that. And so I think that's something that me and other folks who work on campuses are going to have to think about is how can we help students to not feel isolated? Because we know that's a concern for students. And in fact, we've had a lot of students say that, even though the safest thing from a COVID perspective is to not live with a roommate in a residence hall, we have a lot of students who wanted to live with a roommate because they were sort of nervous about living by themselves for the first time without another person to accompany them in that experience. So that's something that I'm mindful of, and an ongoing concern is the mental health of our students, feelings of isolation, feelings of disconnection, when the most connection we can have is like this through a screen. So I'm happy to talk more about that later if folks have questions about that, or maybe want to know more about strategies or things that we can do to overcome that. But that's a little bit about our plan at Maryland and some of the things I've noticed.
Thank you so much, Ben. I could hear the passion in your voice and the concern for the students, and I know that the population is well served by you and others like you at the University of Maryland. So thank you. We're going to shift now to Chevaun Whitman. Ms. Whitman, take it away.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So thank you, Commissioner Woods. Thank you, Mr. Jefferson, for having us all here. So the interesting thing here is that I think the conversation will sound very similar no matter which college or university is engaging in the conversation at this point. So I believe Commissioner Woods used the word different to describe the fall semester. This is a different experience for colleges and universities across the country. And so when, I'm sorry, one question. Can we move next in the slide? It's okay. Thank you. Thanks. So when thinking of what the fall term will look like, I immediately just thought about the fall and the COVID-19 impact that it's had. And it really started at the beginning or middle of the spring semester. And let me backpedal a little bit. I want to follow the same format that Mr. Beltran did. Let me explain a little bit about what I do here at Morgan State, and then I'll get into some of the items I want to discuss. And so I am very excited to be back at Morgan State University. I worked here years ago, and I've been back for about a year now, and I am their director for Bare Essentials One-Stop Student Services Center. So Morgan State is in the process of developing a one-stop student services center where students can come to one central location to receive assistance with undergraduate admission, bursar or student payment, financial aid, registrar, and residence life and housing. And so we're kind of like a catch-all for the departments, and we serve as the front-facing extension for these offices. So we provide customer service, we provide one-on-one support if students and parents have any questions about the enrollment experience or journey. And so I'm really excited about this position. I have a passion for helping students achieve their goals. I have a passion for working with families that are unfamiliar with higher education and some of the nuances that we are more familiar with as administrators. And so I'm really excited about this moment in history, even though it's a little different. So I want to go back to Commissioner Wood's description using the word different. And so in preparing for the discussion today, I thought about this generation that's entering into colleges and universities this fall. You know, they are more virtually engaged than some of us. And so I think in some ways, while things are different, I think that this generation has a unique strength in a way. And so I think that they're going to have an opportunity, and I apologize, I think the sun got a little bright. They're going to have an opportunity to kind of capitalize on some of their strengths and things that we admire about them in the way that they engage virtually. And I think that in some ways they will, be a little more successful than we may be thinking because we're so accustomed to doing things a certain way. So when proposed to think about what the fall term would look like, I thought about it in three points. Lessons learned from the COVID-19 impact, managing expectations, and the new education landscape. And so, like my colleague, Mr. Beltran, has already explained, there are so many changes that colleges and universities are thinking about right now. And I want to go back to that February-March time period earlier this year when K through 12 and higher education institutions had to start to really make decisions, some tough decisions. And I want to say that Morgan State University was actually the first, one of the first universities in the state to actually decide to close our campus and send our students home because we really, really, really want to make sure that our students and our faculty are safe. And so that continues to be at the forefront of every decision we make. And so that spring action led us into fall planning. And so we went into a series of surveys and town halls. We had town halls with our new students, newly admitted students, and continuing students. We developed committees and task forces just to kind of evaluate where everybody was, at the end of that semester and preparing to come into the fall semester. Like, how do you feel? Do you feel comfortable coming back into campus? Do you prefer to learn virtually or remotely? Like, what are you feeling right now? And I think Mr. Beltran raised a very, very pointed concept that we need to think about, the mental health of people, because it's one thing to have the option to do things virtually, and it's another thing to be forced to do things virtually. So from all of the committees, the town halls, the surveys, and task forces, we started to develop our campus reopening plan, and it's been a very moderate plan. And I want to just encourage everyone who's participating today, just remember, that colleges and universities are going and learning just as you are. Like in our everyday lives, we've had to make some decisions. And like Mr. Beltran already mentioned, something that you decided 2 weeks ago may not be the same decision you would make today. But we've taken that information, taken that data, and started to develop a plan that we think will be best for our students and our faculty and our staff. And in the event that those plans change, the university is in a position to pivot quickly and make some changes. So if I think about some of the lessons learned, one of the things that we were really faced with is retention, right? So retention is like keeping your students, retaining your students. And so when people were asked not to return to campus after spring break, we had to think about, how do we retain these students? How do we make sure that our students have the resources that they need? We have a lot of students who may have heavily relied on some of the campus supports and resources like libraries and computer labs and tutoring and peer mentoring and professional counseling. And like Mr. Beltran said, housing insecurities, but also food insecurities. And so we really had to gradually shift to be able to move people off campus, but also allow those students who found themselves in a predicament where they could not leave to be supported and, just have a place to be safe. So we also started looking into partnerships in obtaining resources for our students. We were able to receive laptops and things that we issued to students. And so I'm sharing this information with you as I'm pretty sure most of the participants will be first-year students this fall. If there is a resource that you may not have, definitely talk to your college and university to find out what resources they may be willing to offer at this time, especially if things are completely virtual, if you don't have that option of coming to campus and using those physical spaces. So do not be afraid to ask questions. You want to talk to your student affairs division, or even, I don't know, maybe some of you guys have engaged in some sort of orientation. I know that at Morgan State we've had our Access orientation, which is our first time first-year student program is our orientation, but we've moved it to a virtual platform, and that was a decision that had to be made in March. And so each week, our incoming freshman class has participated in some type of activity and some type of engagement to keep them connected to campus. But what I'm saying is, if you've had some sort of contact and connection with the people at your future college or university, reach out to them and find out what types of resources may be available to you in the fall. Peer mentoring has been a big thing. In this time, sometimes you just want to talk to someone who's going through the same thing as you, or who's been at the college and university and may have a different perspective and can share some of their positive memories and information with you during this time. I know a lot of colleges and universities may do some sort of buddy thing or connection to make sure students have someone to speak to. So lessons learned, taking action in the spring and planning for the fall. And so keeping those things in mind as we move into the fall semester, while we may have been forced to make changes in the spring, we definitely want to keep in the forefront of our mind what things were we required to scale or change, and what things were we required to ramp up a little bit that we found may have supported our students. So moving on to the next point, managing expectations. And I think of this whole scenario as a case study in progress. There are a lot of major changes that happen, like For instance, many of you, if you graduated this past spring, you may not have been able to participate in some of the traditional ceremonies like graduation and prom and, senior night and things like that. But that doesn't mean that just because you didn't have those types of things, I'm really confident that this class will have a very, very unique experience just because of those challenges that you've gone through in the spring. And so we started thinking about how will we do those things. I know our freshman class, we usually have a Promethean where the freshman class will walk across a bridge and they'll hold a candle and, you don't want your candle to blow out before you cross the bridge and things like that. And so we really have to, dig deep to find out how can we provide that same type of connectivity, that same level of commitment and inclusion that these classes have had in the past. SGA activities. I know that our Student Government Association, we still continue to have I'm so sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here, where they vote for their candidates and things. We still did all of that during the spring, but we did it virtually. And I think that students still found ways and opportunities to engage. As far as managing expectations from the pedagogical point, right? So like being open to learning and exchanging information and ideas in different ways. Many public school systems around the country had to close as well. And, students transitioned to remote learning. Same thing we did here. And so there were courses that weren't necessarily designed to be offered in an online format, but faculty was committed, students were committed, and we made it work. And so just keeping these things in the forefront of your mind. What did you gain from learning virtually? What was a challenge? Sharing those things that you've learned about yourself the past few months, sharing that information with your professors. So going into it, like your strengths, your weaknesses, and where you may need some support. And just continuing to be flexible. Every day we learn something different. And so just, continue to monitor whatever communication medium that your college is using to share information with you. That they're making the best decisions that they can at this time, and just continue to be flexible, continue to ask your questions if you have any, and just continue to try to be as flexible as possible. And I think that Benjamin raised a good point when he said, do I want to continue to pay a certain amount of tuition to attend a certain college, and I'm going to be at home for those who choose to stay at home? And I think that once you've decided to attend a certain college or university, there's a certain level of commitment there. And I would like to say that you would appreciate the academic rigor that the college is still trying to provide to you at this time. So I want you to hold on to that. Just remember why you chose this place, this college or university. What connection did you feel? And hold on to that during this period of time, because things will continue to change. But you just want to hold on to that, whatever that was that said, this is home for me. This is where I want to go. And so another thing that we want to talk about, and Benjamin mentioned it earlier, is financial changes. So again, managing expectations. We were talking earlier about how it's a shared responsibility, right? College and families sending you to college and students being students and the university supporting you. It's all a shared responsibility. We're all a community. And so we understand that there have been some major financial implications for families, loss of jobs, people have experienced death and things like that. And so, you want to continue to work with your financial aid offices to see if there's any type of professional judgments that may be able to happen or be made on your behalf, depending on how your family structure may have been impacted by COVID-19. And so I want to move forward very quickly to allow time for the other guests. And so on the horizon, this fall semester is going to be very unorthodox for many people. I believe Commissioner Woods mentioned earlier how Harvard University said, hey, students can come on campus, but we're not doing any face-to-face coursework. A lot of colleges and universities are currently exploring what will be done as far as delivery of education and classes and things. So I just want to say at Morgan State University, we are offering right now 4 options for our students. We have students who will do web only, and those students, of course, would be asked to stay at home if they're not going to engage in any type of face-to-face instruction. hybrid, where there will be asynchronously online offered classes and some face-to-face sessions, remote instruction where courses will take place at set times and students will be asked to participate remotely, and then in person with remote location options. And so the students will be, one class observing, and faculty will be able to be face-to-face in certain environments. Another thing that Mr. Beltran talked about is lowering the density of campus. And so at Morgan State, we have reduced our housing capacity by 31%. So moving a lot of our campus residence halls to single occupancy, but we are also contracting with other hotels and apartment complexes nearby, because we still want to make sure that we're able to accommodate as many first-year students as possible, and as well as our special cohort groups like our band, our honor students, our athletes, and things like that. So I just want to wrap up with a few, just three points. So, just don't let this dampen your student life experience. There will be many opportunities for you guys to continue to have some normalcy with regard to just student life and engagement. And Mr. Beltran mentioned a key word, buy-in. Just continue to remember why you chose that college or university that you've decided to go to. Just know that your college and university wants to support you as much as they can, but you have to make sure that you speak up. And just remember that it's a shared responsibility. And if you're experiencing anything where you feel like you need to talk to somebody, reach out to Student Affairs or your counseling center for any support that you may need. I'm going to wrap it up here.
Thank you so much, Ms. Whitman, for your sage advice. And again, your heartfelt words ring so true. And I know that someone heard something that spoke directly to their experience. And I know we're going to have some great questions for each and every one of you. Having said that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Omar Harrod, University of District of Columbia. Mr. Harrod, please.
Yes, good afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good. Excuse me. Well, again, my name is Omar Harrod. I am the lead recruitment specialist for the University of the District of Columbia. And I am so glad to just be a part of this, this opportunity to speak to you about what the University of the District of Columbia is currently doing. Again, kind of like what's already been echoed, it's steadily changing. And so we are just, as a matter of fact, just had a meeting the other day about what our orientation is going to be looking like. I do know it will be virtual, and so they are working on some of the specifics about that currently. So that is, we're pretty much moving in that direction as well. Just to kind of give you a little bit of background about me, I am from the DC, well, I was born in DC, we're raised in Alexandria, Virginia. I am a proud product of a UDC alum. My mom graduated from the University of the District of Columbia, but she also attended the predecessor schools in DC Teachers, Washington Tech, Federal City, as well as taking classes at UDC. And then she was a teacher in DC for 33 years. So I've known about the school all of my life. And so I'm so tremendously proud and humbled to be able to recruit for her alma mater. I attended Hampton University and got my degree in public relations, and then I've been in admissions for over 14 years. And I worked on both the high school I worked at for Hampton University, but I also worked in Chicago on the high school side, and then now back on that side. So I have a good wide range of sort of the whole admissions sort of world in and of itself. Just to kind of give you a little bit of information about what the university is doing currently from the admissions piece, we are still accepting applications for the fall semester. We are currently waiving the application fee. So if you are interested or thinking about applying or have not applied, you can still apply. Our classes are going to begin on September the 8th. Normally they begin in August, but we've moved the date back to September. We have minimal housing, so our housing really is not something that we concerned about as it relates to. We do have housing, but it's just minimal. And so most of our students are what you may consider commuter students. And so I do know that they are also working with Metro to get Metro passes for students. So that is something that we are working currently on right now. And we happen to be so lucky to have our own Metro stop, so that works for us. Actually, for both locations. So our community college location at the at 801 North Capitol Street is 2 blocks from Union Station, and then we have the UDC Van Ness stop on the Red Line. So that is literally our stop. When you come upstairs, you're on campus. So that really is a great benefit to us. So again, like I said, we are waiving the application fee. The other thing that we're waiving are the SAT or ACT score requirements. If you are applying for a bachelor's degree program, typically a student must have a 2.5 GPA, 890 SAT, or 16 ACT. However, we are waiving the SAT or ACT for students that are applying for a bachelor's degree, as long as they have at least a 2.5 or better GPA. So that is something that we are also doing during this time of COVID. For students that are applying for the associate's degree, SAT or ACTs are not required normally, so you don't have to worry about that. So basically, if you have less than a 2.5 GPA, or if you're applying for one of our special programs at the associate level, then you would just fill out the application, submit your transcript or GED transcript for associate's degree programs, and then we can go ahead and get you admitted to the university. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the University of the District of Columbia is a 4-year institution. A lot of times people have this misconception that we are a community college, and we've never been that. We've always been a 4-year school. We have our community college location, like I said, which is down at 801 North Capitol Street, that houses the associate's degree programs. But we also have workforce development programs, which are free for DC residents. I will say during the COVID time for the fall semester, we have suspended those workforce development programs, and 2 of our associate's degree programs, one in aviation maintenance. We actually have a hangar at Reagan National Airport, so they suspended that program for the fall, and our construction management program is also suspended for the fall semester. Hopefully, prayerfully, everything will be back online for the spring semester for those particular programs. But again, currently, those are the programs that are suspended for the fall. And then again, the Van Ness campus houses the bachelor's degree programs, our master's degree or graduate degree programs, PhD programs, and the David A. Clark School of Law. And so we are, like I said, a full 4-year school, and we are excited to have students still be attending the university. Right now, the plan is that we will be sort of in a hybrid system. So some of our classes will be in classroom, and my guess is going to be probably some of the lab classes, which will be sort of in classroom, but they're still sort of working out the details for that. And then the other portions of the classes will be online. So we're sort of still working out the details, but that is something that we're looking at. Some classes will be completely online, but like I said, some of the classes will be sort of on a hybrid setup. That's pretty much the main thing from the admission side. Like I said, definitely still apply. We're still accepting students. There's still possibly some scholarships out there. I know financial aid has already been sort of sent out to students, but we are still, like I said, still accepting students currently for the fall semester. There are some students that have decided that they wanted to wait and update their enrollment until the spring semester, which is definitely okay as well. So that if that is something that you have already applied and you're looking to do that, just contact our office so that we can update your term from fall to the spring semester. Pretty much that is the main thing with our university. Like I said, with everyone else, it's steadily changing. I do know, like I said, currently we are working on the details of our orientation program. It is definitely going to be virtual, but they're just kind of working out some of the details as to how that's going to look for our students. But you'll definitely be able to engage in different departments, financial aid, if you need to speak with the registrar's office, student counts, any of those main offices you will be able to get in contact with. Also with academic advising, your academic advisors are the ones that are going to be working with you to actually get into your classes. So you'll be working with them as well. With the associate's degree program, normally our students would take the AccuPlacer as as a placement test. They are also looking into that as well for a couple of things that they are looking to adjust. But you will get more information about that as well. So those are sort of the main things in regards to what the University of the District of Columbia is doing. I definitely welcome any questions if you have any. And at this point, I think I'm done. I didn't have a whole lot because ours is really kind of straightforward in that, we are, like I said, still accepting students, but definitely want to make sure that they know that we are doing sort of a hybrid piece. I will mention one of the reasons why, and we sort of stepped out there and did this before they kind of went back on the whole aspect of our international students, because we have a pretty large international population, and that was a huge concern for them as relates to making sure that they were able to get to maintain and still be, for one, our current students, but also new students. And so that was the reason why we decided to kind of go into a hybrid phase so that our students could still be admitted and still be active at the university. That also brings me to another point. I think right now our athletic programs are in suspension. If I'm not mistaken, we are a Division II school, and so they are currently sort of in suspension for the fall, if I'm not mistaken. So that is something else to take note of. So yeah, it's a unique time. I sort of look at this time as it's scary but fun because it's new for everybody. So everybody is trying to figure this thing out. So there's no one right or wrong answer per se. So this is sort of unique and it's affecting everyone. So from K through 12 to the college side. So everybody is in the same boat at this time. So it's actually a good time to kind of be inventive and do something different, do something new and exciting, and something that's going to benefit everybody in the long run. So even though it's a little, quicksandish, it's still sort of a unique time to be in the world of in education overall.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harrod, for your heartfelt account, especially of your mom's story and your life story as being the child of a graduate of the University of the District of Columbia. I know that you carry that with great honor, and you should. And I always like to remind our residents that the University of the District of Columbia is our district state university. And so, I always feel remiss if we don't bring people like you into our conversations to talk about the things that you have going at the University of the District of Columbia, which is, in part the result of taxpayer dollars being allocated to serve the needs of the District of Columbia. So we thank you for your participation, and we thank you for your story and your mom's story by extension. Having said that, I'm going to pass on the baton to our next speaker, Ms. Tammy McCants, who is the Associate Director of Admission at Howard University. Tammy, take it away.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jefferson, and thank you for this opportunity. This has been the first platform that I've been a part of that I've had the opportunity to hear from my colleagues in higher education, and it's refreshing and reassuring to be reminded that we're all in this together. We're all facing the same challenges at this time. We're all having to be more creative and more innovative while keeping the safety of our students and all of our constituents, for that matter, at the forefront of our decision making. One of the things that I think is very, very critical that students that are going into college this year are having to learn, especially since March, is the importance of being open and flexible. That's one of those lessons that I don't think I learned until a little later in life. But this class of 2020 is having to learn that right now. And that's something that will serve you well over the course of your life. to be open and flexible will save you a whole lot of stress and heartache over the course of not only your college career, but your professional and personal life as well. Because we are all experiencing the same things, I've noticed that a lot of us are doing a lot of the same things too. And while we have a reopening plan, it is a dynamic plan. And like all schools are experiencing now, we're having to make updates almost daily based on the nature of this pandemic and what restrictions we're experiencing as things change. And unfortunately, in some cases, as things get worse than better. So with that being said, I'm going to quickly go through what we're doing on campus this semester so that we can leave some time for questions. We are going to start our semester on time, so things will start on August 24th, but we will end our semester for on-campus instruction when we break for Thanksgiving. So our students will leave at Thanksgiving and will not come back to campus until the spring. And of course, we really don't know what the spring is going to bring. We have had to do much like other schools, and that is de-densify our campus. So the majority of all of our classes are going to be online. There are a few classes for our graduate and professional students in particular that have an in-person component that we have to accommodate, especially when there are accreditations involved. But for our entering freshman class, there are going to be two options, online or hybrid. And we're actually referring to the hybrid option as high flex, because while there may be some in-person class meetings, the professors are still required to have an online component. And for our students that have a schedule that involves all online classes, we're strongly encouraging them to stay home. We have had some students that have canceled their housing, and we actually had to cancel all of the housing for students that were planning to be on campus this semester and start from the beginning, because we were mandated by the district government that we had to convert all of our rooms to singles. We're only going to have double occupancy in rooms if the students are siblings or related, or there's some special extenuating circumstance. So that is a big change for us, and isolation issues are one of the things that we are discussing as well, because your freshman year is the year that you lay the foundation for relationships that last the rest of your life. And with our students having to practice social distancing and having to live in single rooms, and most of them, of course, are living on their own for the first time in their lives, it will be a very, very different look. Our orientation activities, as well as our freshman week activities, will all be virtual. And so we are still making updates and changes for students that have elected to stay home and those that are still trying to make the decision about exactly what they're going to do. One of the things that I've learned from this new normal is the difference between the synchronous versus asynchronous delivery options. So for those synchronous classes, you will be in a live environment, much like we are today, where your professor is in the same time frame that you're in, and you have the opportunity to engage. There will be some asynchronous classes where the responsibilities will be set forth in the syllabus at the beginning of the course. You'll move through the course and submit your assignments and whatever is required on a scheduled time frame without having a live component. So we are still making updates and changes and have a very, very fluid plan, because we know that what we want to do this week could be very, very different next week. We are also taking into consideration what the social environment is going to be, as this is a very critical developmental stage for students, and we want to ensure that we are maximizing the opportunities that we have in the virtual environment while being respectful of the fact that we're only operating with 25% capacity on campus in terms of faculty, staff, and administrators, and that the majority of our upperclassmen aren't going to be on campus this semester at all. So I think I'm going to wrap it up. We have some time for questions, but I ask that everybody please be mindful that we really are all in this together, and that it is not a situation where anyone should feel like I'm going to get behind because I'm not on campus. Everybody is experiencing the dynamics of this pandemic, and we are all trying to move forward as best we can while keeping the safety of all of us in mind. So with that, Mr. Jefferson, I'll turn things back over to you so that we have an opportunity for some questions.
Thank you so much again for your thoughtful, can people who are not speaking mute, please? Thank you so much for your thoughtful comments. It's always a pleasure to also have a participant from Harvard University, which is one of the most storied universities in our world, in our country. And so we're just happy to have you on the other Washington, D.C. school. Are there any questions? I'm looking at our chat, and I don't see anything at the moment, but so I do see a question, and so I'm going to follow the order that we talked about initially. And so I'm going to ask Ben to react first, then Chevaun, then Omar, then Tammy, if necessary. Okay. So the first question is, how are you handling tutoring for students who need help? Ben, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit about that. I don't oversee tutoring specifically.
Okay.
I know we do have some academic resources in the residence halls at Maryland in particular that will be offered virtually. And so I imagine most of our tutoring will be in a virtual format, at least at the University of Maryland.
Hi, so at Morgan State University, our tutoring is housed under our Center for Academic Success and Achievement. Virtual appointments are available. The plan is in the fall to offer virtual tutoring appointments as well as limited or scaled in-person tutoring appointments where the spaces will be with sneeze guards and appropriate social distancing space for those, but they really want to restrict it to virtual as much as possible.
Omar?
Currently, are kind of sort of the same thing. Students can definitely reach out to our counseling center, which would allow them to, get, depending on what type of counseling or issues that they're having, they would be able to reach out to them to be addressed. And then depending on what some of the questions are, you'll also have contact with your academic advisors, but also your academic deans within the departments. So you'll have access to their. That's another thing too.
And Tammy?
We will also offer academic support through the Office of Undergraduate Studies, our Writing Center, as well as our Math Lab, and all of those services will be offered virtually.
I have one last question. We're running out of time. This is specifically for UDC. So, Omar, this is your question. Will students be able to sign up for classes after orientation this fall?
Will they be able to sign up for classes?
After orientation is the question.
So we'll orientate. To sign up for your classes, if you're a new student, you'll need to go. Right now, they're going to make it mandatory. They're just sort of working out that. So in order to be able to register, you'll have to go through orientation. If you, for some reason, cannot make orientation, it will be sort of on a case-by-case basis, but you may have to update to the spring semester.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. So I wanted to share with the group a list of resources available. We're coming to the end of our time, and I just wanted to make a couple of remarks in closing. First, I want to thank each and every one of our panelists, Benjamin Beltran, Chevaun Whitman, Omar Harrod, Tammy McCants, for taking time out of their schedules to come to speak to us about what is going on at their respective storied universities. We thank you so much for your commitment to the next generation. We know that this is an incredibly difficult time that we're all living in, but we know that if we work together, we can get through this together. I want the community to know that, and I also want to thank our Commissioner Woods, for her opening remarks that really set the stage for what we were presenting today. I'd like to thank my direct supervisor, Associate Commissioner Brian Williams, for his support. I'd also like to thank our friends at DC TAG and at the TRIO program as well for their support in getting us here today. I want to encourage those of you who are here today to register for the next two in the series. I want you to bring 3 or 4 of your friends and relatives with you to participate. I want people to know that I am here as a resource for the community. You will see on this contact page a link to scholarships and grants that I maintain monthly. And so I want you to make it your responsibility as a student to go and look for funding to go to college. And that starts by monitoring things regularly. I try to update my scholarship page monthly, and so I want you to make my scholarship page a part of your regular search. In closing, I just want to say a few final words. School is important, support is available, ask questions, know that there are no stupid questions. We are all trying to figure this out together, and we will get through this together, and I am here to support you in doing that. Thank you again, and I hope to see each and every one of you at our next event on financial aid, which is next Tuesday, same time. Have a good night, all.